The world is changed. I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air. Much that once was lost, for none now live who remember it. It began with the forging of the great decks. 3 were given to the control players, immortal, wisest, fairest of all beings. 7 to the tribal players, great craftsmen, and 9 decks were gifted to the race of Jang players, who above all desire fair magic. For within these decks was bound the strength and the will to govern each playstyle. But they were all of them deceived, for another deck was made. Deep in the land of Combo, in the fires of Mount Doom, Mr. Bolt Lightning forged a master deck, and into this deck he poured his cruelty, his malice, and his will to dominate all life. One deck to rule them all. But there were some who resisted. A last alliance of Control and Jang players marched against the armies of Mr. Bolt Lightning, and on the very slopes of Mount Bolusan, they fought for the freedom of the Commander community. And when their life totals reached 0, all that could be heard from the Dark Lord was "Get good." Hello, this is Ian Bolusan, better known as Mr. Bolt Lightning, coming to you with a Magic the Gathering related video. Today I will be giving an overview of my personal Gitrog Monster Commander deck. If you would like to see more Magic the Gathering videos, let me know in the comments below. For those not familiar, Commander, also known as Elder Dragon Highlander, is a casual multiplayer format for Magic the Gathering. It is a singleton format, meaning that aside from basic lands, each deck only has one copy of a card. The game is centered around a legendary creature called the Commander, and only cards within the Commander's color identity can be played within the 100-card deck. This version of the Gitrog Monster deck has an average converted mana cost of 2.05, meaning that most of the cards in the deck only require 2 sources of mana to play. Mana is the resource produced by lands and other cards that are used by the player to pay to play cards or to use a desired effect. Overall, the deck is playing 39 lands, 13 artifacts, 6 enchantments, 13 instants, 7 sorceries, and 21 creatures. I won't be going over each individual card, but rather I will do my best to highlight the key cards of the deck. A link to the full deck list will be in the description. The commander of the deck is the Gitrog Monster, a 5 converted mana cost green-black legendary frog horror. It has 6 power and 6 toughness with Death Touch. Its abilities read that at the beginning of your upkeep, you have to sacrifice Gitrog Monster unless you sacrifice a land. It allows us to play an additional land on our turns, and that whenever 1 or more lands are put into our graveyard, we get to draw a card. The main purpose of this deck is to play cards that place our lands into the graveyard to allow us to outdraw our opponents, generate infinite mana, and to find our combo pieces to win the game before the other players at the table can set up a sufficient defense. A key feature of this deck is the assortment of fetch lands. As the name suggests, fetch lands are lands that can be sacrificed in order to retrieve another land from a player's deck. These types of lands serve 2 roles in the deck. 1, it allows us to get a land that we need onto the table, and once the fetch land is in our graveyard, we get to draw a card, if the Gitrog Monster is on the table. We are also running Strip Mine and Wasteland. In this deck, who doesn't like blowing up other people's lands and drawing cards at the same time? Majority of the artifacts in the deck are mana rocks. Essentially, these artifacts allow us to produce a greater amount of mana than our opponents in a given turn. From looking at the cards on the screen, most of our artifacts may only need 1 or 0 mana to play, but produce 1 or 2 mana in return. I would like to mention Elixir of Immortality, a key artifact in the deck. This deck puts a lot of our cards into the graveyard. Elixir of Immortality allows us to essentially put all our cards from our graveyard back into our deck, so that we never run out of cards during the game. As we will see later, this card is key to ensuring we create infinite mana. The two enchantments I would like to focus on are Necropotence and Sylvan Library. Both of these enchantments allow us to see and draw more cards for the small price of life. In Commander, you begin the game with 40 life, and you don't lose the game in most cases until it reaches 0. So if we view our life total as a resource, what is the value of 1 life or even 4 life for a single card? The more cards you draw, the more information you have, and the more options available to you during the game. Instants are cards that you can play on your own or your opponent's turn. I would like to focus on 2 types of instants in the deck. Number 1 are the tutors. Tutors are cards that allow players to search their deck for specific cards and place them into their hands or, in some instances, on the battlefield. The tutors on their screen make sure that we find the cards that we need to win the game. The second type of instants I would like to mention are the protection spells. By now you can tell that this deck will be drawing a lot of cards, making a lot of mana each turn, and unfortunately other people will look to stop this from happening. The easiest way is to remove the Gitrog monster from the table. Cards like Autumn's Veil, Veil of Summer, and Heroic Intervention make sure the frog stays on the table to keep the draw train going. Sorceries are cards that can only be played on your turn, and only when there are no other cards on the stack. The 2 main sorceries in the deck are Gaia's Blessing and Life from the Loam. Gaia's Blessing, similar to Elixir of Immortality, makes sure that the cards in our graveyard are always put back into the deck. Life from the Loam provides us another way of putting cards from our deck into the graveyard, while also providing options to bring back lands from the graveyard to your hand. A lot of the creatures in the deck serve the same purpose as the mana rocks we discussed earlier. They are a way to produce more mana than our opponents in a given turn, for a very low cost. The deck also has a lot of creatures that allow us to discard cards from our hand and into the graveyard. This allows us to jumpstart our draw engine as long as Gitrog monster is on the table. A unique card in the deck is Underwhelm Lich. Underwhelm Lich takes Gitrog monster's draw ability to another level. Usually when we put a land into our graveyard, we only get to draw 1 card from Gitrog monster's ability. The Lich takes this draw ability and lets us look at 3 cards at one time, and allows us to put 1 card into our hand and 2 cards into the graveyard. So if you have at least 1 land in the 3, you can continue this process several times in a given turn. Just make sure you put the land in the graveyard. So if everything is going well, you are drawing more cards and have more mana than anyone else on the table. And now it's time to win the game. This Gitrog monster deck is a combo deck, and here's how it works. The combo contains 4 pieces: the Gitrog monster, Scourge Familiar, Faith of the Devoted, and Dakmor Salvage. Once Dakmor Salvage is in your hand and the other pieces are on the table, you use Scourge Familiar's ability to discard Dakmor Salvage, producing 1 black mana. Once Dakmor Salvage is in your graveyard, you will be able to draw a card due to Gitrog monster's ability, but don't. Instead, dredge 2. The dredge mechanic states if you would draw a card, instead you may put exactly X cards from the top of your library into the graveyard. If you would, return this card from your graveyard to your hand, otherwise draw a card. Once you have Dagmar Salvage in your hand, you repeat this process for infinite mana. You win the game by using the 1 mana you produce each time to pay for Faith of the Devoted's ability to drain 2 life from each opponent from the table, and you gain 2 life as a bonus. Do this until your enemies are at 0, and you win the game. I hope you enjoyed this deck overview. Please let me know what you thought and what other videos you would like to see next. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and see you then.